Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Tim O'Shea with Buffalo News. If you're looking at the screen right now, you recognize the guy on the other side of it. Welcome, Robby Takac of the Goo Goo Dolls.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I think you're probably doing well. I was about to say that this is a cliche thing to say. I was about to say, Robby, you're probably doing better. You're in California. But the real story here is you love Buffalo and you're back this weekend for the 21st edition of the big annual event. So we're going to talk about that, and just to lay out this conversation for everybody. Thanks for watching us. If you're watching live, you are on the Buffalo News Facebook page. You might be watching this later, the recording at buffalonews.com. But if you're watching live, if you have questions for Robby about life with the Goo Goo Dolls, Music is Art, the festival I was just mentioning, his work as a studio owner, GCR Audio in Buffalo, or anything else, you can drop it in the Facebook chat, and we're going to pick a few questions and ask them. But Robby, here we are. You and I spent some time over the summer when you were still in Buffalo.
Yeah.
You've been out of Buffalo, out on the road for the past couple months now, if I have that right.
Mm-hmm.
In the midst of the big tour on the West Coast. Just set the scene for us. Tell us where you are right now, what you were doing last night, what you've got coming up the next couple of days.
Today I'm in Costa Mesa. We're playing in Irvine tonight. Then I can't remember the place afterwards, but somewhere else in California the next night. Yeah. And then get on a plane right after the show and head to Buffalo and fly all night and start dropping stages at Riverworks. But yeah, this tour's been out about 2 months, and tonight's our last show with OAR, a band called OAR. And I'm home for 3 days and then back out again, and we start up with Fits and the Tantrums for another month about. So it's a busy month for me here. So
Robby, you've got Music is Art Festival happening this Saturday at Buffalo Riverworks and Riverfest Park. You're straddling the river, right? You're going to literally ferrying people back and forth across the water. So let's talk a bunch about that. But before we get into the details, it feels, man, like every year I talk to you about Music is Art, you are somewhere else in the country on tour. COVID aside, you're somewhere else in the country on tour, hopping on a plane, zipping back to Buffalo just ever so briefly, and then going back out on tour. This is special to you. You always make time for it, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's 21 years now. There's people playing the festival that don't remember there not being one. And like, to me, yeah, that's quite a motivational thing. I mean, it's a lot of work. Tracy and Sarah at the office are unbelievable, but they can only do so much. So we really depend on, so many volunteers and, so many local organizations and companies, to help support this, financially and with manpower and everything else to make this whole thing work while I'm out here doing all this stuff, which is crazy. And that's why I mentioned the value of Tracy and Sarah. Really, it's they really drive the engine of Music is Art for sure.
And Tracy and Sarah are your staff at the Music is Art nonprofit, right? So
correct.
We should let everyone out there watching or listening to this know that Music is Art is an event that happens every year. It's a huge festival. What do you have? 250 plus bands this year.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, it's insane. There's performance artists, probably 40, 50 performance artists, live muralists, dancers, DJs, circus acts, wrestlers. I mean, it just goes on and on. It really is a pretty hefty dose of the creative thinking, of Western New York in one day. It's a good chance to catch up for sure.
And Music is Art at the same time, I'm going to get into the semantics here for a minute, is also the name of the foundation that oversees the festival and does year-round programming, right? You work with schools. Mm-hmm. You can obviously say this with more history than I can. But from a distance, it looks to me like, Music is Art has really tried to nurture the next generation of musicians and songwriters and put instruments into the hands of kids who can't necessarily get them easily or at all. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think, when we started out many years ago, I think we were just Buffalo was in a much different place. You know, there wasn't there were a lot of very deep holes in the streets, and you know, not a lot of cash flowing in, and so uh, I guess rightfully so. I guess as an adult, I understand this a little better. I guess rightfully so. You need to fill those holes in the streets, and you need to deal with these social situations. But quite often, music and the arts sort of fall to the back. So I think at that time we thought it was well. I guess I need to take one more step back. The first festival was held during the Allentown Festival, and we which we loved because it brought 100,000 people into our neighborhood. But we felt our sort of indie scene was a little bit underrepresented that weekend, so we decided to throw a little party in my parking lot and bring in some bands and bring in some artists. And it was met with some resistance. And I won't go into that too much, but it was met with some resistance. But what we found was that um, the local music community was really excited about getting together and actually making something that was a little bit bigger, than what they could do by themselves. And so we were trying to figure out how to channel those energies. And over the years, at first in a very primitive state, but now in actually a very real not for profit type situation. We started to reach into the creative community a little bit and try to help out. And we started by collecting instruments. And in the last 20 years, we've put well over $500,000 worth of instruments in the schools and communities here. We have jazz concerts, seasonal jazz concerts that we hold where we gather schools together. Uh, we have a Battle of the Bands, which we've been doing year after year. We've been doing um, a thing called the Music is Art Alliance, which started over COVID and was actually sort of just a place for people to get together, musicians to get together and discuss. I don't know the anguish and joys of being an indie musician in Buffalo, and they got together often during COVID over the web here, and when they were actually able to get together, it really turned into a really beautiful thing. So they get together a couple times a month down at my studio and at the Music is Art headquarters, and get together, write songs, and just talk about being a creative type, in a not always so creatively accepting world. And yeah, so and I could go on and on. There's so much more that we do. We help with the Buffalo Cherry Blossom Festival every year. We're a partner in that. We're a partner in Party on the Portico down at the Buffalo Museum. So yeah, I mean, we've really worked ourselves into the community over the years and really figured out a way to engage and ignite the creative community to help out as well.
I want to pause here and ask you about the studio you just mentioned. It's GCR Audio, which is right on Franklin Street, on the outskirts of downtown there. And I know recently, in the last 6 months, you officially expanded by purchasing a second building, which was actually your first building.
Yeah.
So we've got a story for anyone interested in Robby's work, not only as a rock musician, but as a nonprofit founder and as an entrepreneur running studios. Go to buffalonews.com. We've got a profile that's either up right now or going live, depending when, or going live soon, depending when you read this, right? When you watch this, I should say. But that story digs into this. Let's hit it a little bit here. You've been a studio owner for the better part of 2 to 3 decades right now. You've been in a couple of locations, always in the same neighborhood. Tell people a little bit about what keeps you coming back to a studio and owning your own studio in Buffalo when, I mean, realistically, man, with the Goo Goo Dolls, I mean, you could and do record in all kinds of different places. You don't need to have your own to do your music, but you do have your own, and a lot of people do their music there.
Yeah, Trackmaster Audio, I was an intern there. I went to Medaille College. May they rest in peace. And they had one of the most amazing practicum / internship programs, and it really led me to Uh, I was on the radio for years due to that. I was um, and I got into radio production through Kim Ferrillo and Ellen Baumgartner, who were two folks who own Trackmaster Audio downtown, which was the premier studio in town in the 80s. And I was an intern there. And I spent an awful lot of time with them, uh, just being around a studio and seeing kind of what a studio, was able to offer to people. And our band was sort of moving at the same time. And so it became like a great outlet for us. And I think after, we made some records and, I moved away and stuff like that, I found myself coming back often to work in that same atmosphere because it was the atmosphere that I that fostered, what we ended up doing. And I really miss that, and it's funny, you move on, uh, to different parts of your career and you realize the parts that you are the most valuable at. And those tend to be the places that you spend most of your time within your organization. But my heart still yearned for an awful lot of that other stuff, that made me feel whole. And I think that that's what kept me coming back to Buffalo so much, being able to work with young bands. And then when Music is Art started to kick up, I started to realize like living in Los Angeles, it was amazing. I lived in New York and Los Angeles between those two, between leaving and coming back again. And you would come up with all these great ideas. And in LA, it was always like, yeah, that would be really cool. And that's how the conversation would end. In Buffalo, the conversations would end with, okay, how are we going to do this? And it's a manageable enough size city to be able to actually pull off some pretty exciting and fun things in. And I think you can just see by our summers in Buffalo, which unfortunately it took a pandemic for me to be home for one of them. But the amount of stuff and the amount of festivals and the amount of gatherings of people in our city, it really is unbelievable, So I know those energies, are what kept me coming back positively.
The studio that you've built, GCR Audio, has really been a magnet for performers who have come through town too. I sat with some of your staff for the piece that we have going live on buffalonews.com, and they were telling me stories of Lil Wayne's manager calling after a concert at KeyBank Center and saying, Wayne, he wants to come over.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
James Taylor being in town with a couple of off days before or after a show, recording and ordering Fat Bob's barbecue at your
Yeah.
studio. I know
Yeah.
you're not around for all of that. You've got your own life as a touring musician, as a rock musician. But did you ever foresee that kind of thing happening when you started to build this?
Well, that was actually, I mean, I guess the studio was built in a couple phases, but when John and I came back to town and kind of did the big rebuild on the studio back about 20 years ago, that really was the concept, was that we were hoping that we could sort of turn it into, a place where, like we could find more and more of our friends and peers within our business to kind of come and kind of start recording. But it's tough, man. Like situations are what they are. And, based on the producer you're working with, based on, where all your people are located, it just didn't happen as quickly as we thought it would. But the thing that GCR Audio, like, we went back into more of the idea of, we're a studio that serves the community, in town. And, we always want to be world class, but we also want to be accessible, because that's important, when you're dealing, with bands from your area, they can go anywhere. And so you have to be accessible to those folks. But I do think that as we've been around like 20 years now. We've been on the cover of 20 some years now, the recording studio has been. We've been on the cover of Mix Magazine. We've been in an unbelievable amount of stories. We have an unbelievable amount of credits, in a crazy amount of genres. And I think the thing that's supposed to happen is actually happening, and people are recognizing, our achievements along the way, and have a word has been spreading, and it's an actual viral moment for our studio, off the web. So, but I think it's been good. It's been slow. It is always a uphill battle owning a recording studio. It's people say it's much like owning a boat. It's the day you build it is an amazing day, and then the day you hand it off to the next person is also an amazing day. So, hopefully that will be for a few years now. But everything seems to be going great. Our engineers are crazy. Jay Zabricki, who you spoke with, has done some amazing records in there over the past few years. Mark Hunt, Elijah Hooks, Jeremy Cochise. I mean, I could just go on and on. Jenna Rakowski, Mike Bridgers, like all these guys, Rich Ells. They all have a specialty, that is very useful. So, no matter what you do, there's someone who understands what you're doing, within the building, and that's been a huge help as well.
And it's, this is something that was cool for me to learn about. We're not just talking rock music like you do, or, punk rock or alternative, things that would be like in the musically somewhere, in the mind map of what the Goo Goo Dolls do. Buffalo has an incredible hip hop community. You mentioned Elijah Hooks. I know he's a key,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you guys are doing all kinds of music there. I'm going to go back to a question I asked you earlier. Did you see that coming when you opened this place up to the public?
I don't know. I don't really know what we saw coming. I think that place means so much to me that I kind of didn't care what happened in it. I just wanted to make sure it didn't stop, so much unbelievable history and unbelievable creative moments have happened in that room. You know, to a small segment of our community, incredibly historical moments, have happened in that room as well. Some of the greatest musicians the city's ever seen have had some of their finest moments in that room, and many who we've lost along the way as well, and so to me it was just important that it was happening. I kind of didn't care what happened or how it happened. I just wanted to make sure it was happening.
Here's a key part of Goo Goo Dolls history that I've written about you guys for a long time. I didn't know this, and I guess I'm going to fact check it with you right now. Your first big hit was Name. I do know that. Was Name recorded in Trackmaster, or what we now call GCR Audio?
Yeah. Well, we started it. All the demos were done for it in the back room where Jay Zubricki is now, and the little thing. So there's demos of that song floating around. And then we did the record up in a place called Metalworks up in Toronto. The guys in Triumph owned a studio up there. So we went up there and we recorded up there. But Name was a particularly different song for this band. It was much different than everything else on the record. So the recording of that song moved. We moved from Toronto, or Mississauga actually, right back down to Trackmaster again, because we could afford to be there, and so much of the recording of that song happened in Buffalo. Yeah, for sure. And I believe the guitar might still be there as well, I think.
A little bit of, it's funny when driving people around Buffalo, if we have somebody visiting, whenever we go past GCR Audio, which is, you've got that little sign. I mean, people out there watching this, if you're in Buffalo, just drive by, you'll see it. there's a little sign out front, but you have to know what you're looking for. And when I point out, yeah, that's the studio where, and I'll start dropping some Goo Goo Dolls history. You know it because people come up to you and talk to you about it all the time, and obviously
Yeah.
lived it. But it's a pretty cool thing. Speaking of people coming up to you all the time, we got a note when we let the world out there know that you and I would be chatting today. I received a note from a gentleman named Jim McLaughlin, who, and I might get his stage name wrong here, I might mispronounce it. Is it Jimine the Singing Mime? Uh,
Oh yeah, I love that guy.
yeah. So he said that you'd okay. He got this right. He said, hey, Mr. Oshai, he's gonna laugh when you mention my name. But let me read you a little piece of what he said because there's a point in here I'd love to have you expand on. He said, Robby always finds, he's talking about music as art. Robby always finds time to walk around the festival grounds and encourage the performers to give their best to the crowds. And then he gave a little bit of his history, performing over the years. But his point, of course, is he really appreciates how accessible you are to the performers and to the fans. What I want to, I know that's you, but I want to ask you a little bit about the art of it, because you're running. I know you got a staff and a lot of volunteers, but you're running a festival. I know that you like some of the technical problem solving and making sure everything's working right. That's kind of in your roots too. But man, you get stopped all the time for photos as well. How do you manage to get things done and make people feel special and seen all in the course of one day? I truly am curious.
This has happened a few times. Some parents will walk up with some dude who's taller than them with a mustache going, come on, we got to get your picture this year. It's like, I feel like Mickey Mouse sometimes, like, dude, it's awesome, man. I don't know. It's like, how do you say no? Like and I got to tell you, man, sometimes like literally something's on fire and like, and like I'm running as fast as I can, like to try to get to it. And like somebody stops me with their 5-year-old. What am I going to do? Am I going to tell them no? I'm not, like, so it's just part of the day. And aside from losing my voice every single year, which is a challenge when I have a show 2 days later, I don't know, man. I mean, the fact that people support this situation, it just means so much to me, man. I mean, like, I every single person that attends, every single person that donates a nickel to keeping it free, because that's the key here. The fact that people can just come and make it happen. I that for years that has been a discussion about, because we have to fund this every year, and it was easy when it was 2 stages. It's tough when there's 27 stages. It's tough to fund. So people, there have been many suggestions, just charge $5 to get in, but you know what, it wouldn't be the same thing, man. It's like this is all about you not having to make a commitment for anything but getting your body down there, and same things with the bands. I just want them to be able to show up with their guitar and make it happen. We supply all the back lines, we supply all the PAs, we supply all the lights, we supply all the stages, we supply all the security, we supply, I mean, I could just go on and on and on and on and on. Like, an event doesn't happen unless all those things happen, and so getting back to the pictures, and like every single one of those people is integral to this thing happening, man. Because like the minute either the back end or the front end of this doesn't care about it, then it's done, because this is all built on energy, man, and so yeah, I'm more than willing to take pictures and more than willing to thank people for being a part of this thing.
Anybody who wants to read more about Robby's approach to all of this, to making the music literally play, to, I didn't know about the putting out fires, but putting out fires, to connecting with fans too. Check out the story that's at buffalonews.com. If you're watching this live on Facebook right now, just go down to the comments. You'll see a Buffalo News link to that story, and we dig in a lot deeper there. Robby, before we go, I do want to ask you about your comfort zone, because here we are talking about you, again, being an entrepreneur, running a studio, being a nonprofit founder, overseeing a nonprofit and really setting the direction. And when you lose funding, which I know was a big challenge this year, going out and finding ways to raise that funding. So we're talking about those things. And in the midst of this, oh yeah, he's in my term, not yours, you don't call yourself this, but he's a rock star, and he's, you're Goo Goo Doll. And there's a heck of a lot that comes with that. And anybody who's, had the chance to see you and John out there playing will see, I mean, you are this total kinetic ball of energy, jumping up and down on stage, wailing on the bass guitar. It's a real spectacle to watch. And I'm wondering, of all these things, being a businessman, raising money, being amongst the fans and amongst the performers, being a performer yourself out on stage, playing Broadway or Slide, where do you feel the most comfortable and at home? Where can you go into almost a Zen mode and just live in that moment and let that moment be everything that matters?
When I'm camping with my daughter. And that's the answer. Like, that's when I feel like I finally disconnected. And like, I don't know, man. It like those are like all this stuff is like you said, it's kinetic. Like what you see up there, that's like that's my day every day. Like I wake up and like it's just like what's happening? Like this and this and this, and I'm 15 emails behind, and every day, like I have never caught up on my emails. But every once in a while, there's like a Zen moment when you can kind of like stop and take a look at everything. Like, people people ask us like when your band broke, like back, like when Name and Iris and all this stuff was hitting, what did it feel like? And I was like, dude, I don't know. I can barely remember. Like, we were so busy. There was so much going on. Like, it's really hard sometimes to stop and like take a look at what's really happening at that moment, and you get flashes of it, but like, you get a flash and you're like, wow, this is great. Oh yeah, but what about, like that's how my life is, when I get those moments, when you're on the stage, like that's a comfort zone because we know what's up there, but there's still 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, 12,000, whatever people staring at you. Like, your pants fall down, you're in trouble, like, my pants fall down, when we're out camping, my daughter will laugh at me and then I'll pull them back up and we'll get on and do our stuff, there's always that tension, so that is my comfort zone. I know that sounds probably not what people want to hear, but like being away, like if you're too comfortable, you're not going to do your best, man, but when you're with your family, you can drop that all and you can just be yourself. Sorry. And you can you can just be yourself.
Robby, at the risk of editorializing, honest to God, man, I think that coming from you, I think that is exactly what people would expect to. And I will leave it. I will leave it right there. All right. So for everybody watching,
I gotta pick this stuff up, man. I just made a mess.
Yeah. So good thing we're gonna wrap. I'm gonna do a little outro here. You can go clean up. For everybody watching this, if you're watching live, head over to buffalonews.com. If you are not watching live, head over to buffalonews.com. Check out our story on Robby. If you want to see him and you're in Buffalo, he's back this Saturday all day at Riverworks and Riverfest Park. Just jump back and forth across the river. If you want to see the Goo Goo Dolls, you got to head to California, Oregon. I think you guys are in New England a little bit later in the fall, and then you're in Australia and New Zealand in the winter. So, if anybody wants to take a long ride or a long plane ride, see you there. All right, Robby, you got to do some cleaning up and you got a show to play and a flight to catch. We will see you soon.
Thanks so much for your help every year, man. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Robby.
All right, brother. See you later.
See ya.